he's in his courtroom, he understands what he's in front of him. A lot of them are just, they're expecting these attorneys to kind of fill them in. And that's one thing. Letney has had free reign from the city attorney. Because he's the city attorney, he must be right, so we allow that to happen. Instead of challenging Letney, which this judge did, he made him come up and say, what are the guidelines? Or what are the guardrails, he called them. And there is no guardrails.
Show me what you got.
Yeah.
And he came up with nothing. So in another courtroom, would that have happened? I don't know.
No, I haven't seen it.
No.
We've had some other good judges, but I haven't seen one get down to that level of judicial decision making, where you're getting down to really basic things about the way government's supposed to operate, what it's like to be an individual in a free society, what are your rights?
Rule of law.
Right?
We actually ruled on law.
Good morning. Welcome back to Talking Racine. It's the usual suspects here, Mr. George Myers.
Good morning.
Mr. Ken Spodek.
Good morning.
And Dr. Ken Jorgen. That's me. Well, we got a few things to talk about here this morning. We got a very, very interesting case that's taken place, and that has to do with the COVID virus and the protocol that the city has come up with to keep us all safe and sound and alive. At least that's what their stated purpose is. And somebody filed a suit against the city of Racine, a young man who has a fitness center whose business has been shut down, and he's like, hey, I'm losing my business here, I'm going to go under, I can't comply with this. And there is an imperative to comply because there is a forfeiture that is attached to not complying. And that's where it gets a little sticky. What the hell is a forfeiture? Well, basically, it's going to turn out to be a fine. But this case that this young man brought was going in front of Judge Piantek, and he said, no, I don't want to hear about this. Basically, he said, let things stand the way they are. And then, and we mentioned this last week.
Bowersox rules, yeah.
And Judge Fredrickson says, no, the young man deserves his day in court, and he invited him in to come and explain his situation, and the city was there to explain their point of view. And gentlemen, what happened?
The judge came up and did it, man. I haven't seen anything like this at the local level. I just don't remember it coming up before.
Yeah.
I don't either.
But he went right down to basics of the Constitution and limiting power and this type of stuff. Said Bowersox is
Dottie Bowersox.
Dottie Bowersox, yeah, she's the health instructor. In fact, she's the one that got this order out that with who can do what with their business, and she decides what the fine is going to be or the penalty if you violate it. That was that's another thing the judge brought up is that. What's this forfeiture?
What is
how
the
much
forfeiture?
Is it? According to what Dottie Bowersox says, and he just flat out says it that when Bowersox's own opinion that determined what was reasonable and necessary, in other words, she's making all the rules. He asked, "Isn't that a despot?"
Yeah,
it is, and
absolutely.
That this unelected bureaucrat can make rules and regulations how we have to live our lives. It's just totally unreasonable, and we brought that up a couple
We did.
couple
And actually, one of the
episodes
things
ago.
I think that surprised me was that we brought this up last week that Fredrickson was going to pick up this case,
which was very unusual.
Which was unusual in its of itself. I have to tell you, I never expected this because I expected the same old in Racine.
Right.
And when I watched it was roughly 2 hours, and we're going to put it. And actually, it's on Talking Racine. But when I did watch it, I was amazed the fact that he asked questions. The judge was out there asking questions. Let's talk about this was one of his statements. He actually took the statutes, brought them to the table, discussed them with the city attorney Letney, and actually handed Letney lunch. As far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it was a beautiful thing.
He did. It's a fundamental level, where you have this one person kind of making the rules and deciding on what the forfeiture would be on the case and enforcing the rules. And that's what James Madison said in the Federalist paper was the definition of tyranny. when one person, a group of person, has all three powers of government. And here it is, right here in Racine, but it goes on and on and on.
On and on around here.
Corey Mason just passed his own legislation with regards to some of this rents program stuff without the council doing it under emergency power. So we're seeing this, and you just expect, well, we're going to have to fight.
This is the way Racine runs. This is the way it runs. And when you see an honest judge, his city officials ready for an honest judge.
My point of view is Dottie Bowersox's recommendations. There's nothing wrong with them. If people, it's good advice. And
I agree with that.
If people want to comply with it, I think it's a good idea.
If government wants to do some research and come up with some really good information, pass it on to the people and say,
they're doing that. But what the part that I object to is like this forfeiture. If you don't do this, you're liable to have a forfeiture imposed against you. What forfeiture? And who's to determine whether or not I'm in 100% compliance or not? It's just way over the top.
Whether her information is good or not. I mean, sometimes government puts out information that isn't so good. So it's like...
Well, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that in this situation, there was this pending doom, that everybody was like confronted with. And it's like, well, let's step back. Let's just slow down here, take it easy, and we'll get back into this slowly and methodically. It's fine. It makes sense. But to say, you got to do this, and this, or it's going to cost you money.
Yeah,
and she doesn't have the authority to do that, which is what the judge said. You don't have the authority to do that.
You want to play? I got a little clip here. You want to?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, absolutely. Let's play a little clip.
I think you're suggesting that Ms. Bowersox has unlimited police power under 252.03. Is that where this is going?
Absolutely.
And if it is, I want to know what the limits of her police power are and where it's stated in that statute that she has any limitation at all on what her police powers are, to the extent you're claiming that they are under 252.03.
Well, Judge, I'm not suggesting they're unlimited, and it would be unfair for anyone to say that I suggest they're unlimited.
Oh, wait, okay, well then show me in the statute where it's limited.
He's not suggesting that they're unlimited, but he can't describe the limits.
Right.
That's absolutely crazy. This is the guy that we've got representing us as a legal mind here in Racine. Oh, my. Did you want to finish some more?
Yeah, I want to do a little bit more, but it's, again, to me, it was always a power thing, at a certain level here. I mean, the state came down, and I think Racine came in with this power mentality that we're going to control the city of Racine, and we're going to keep you healthy and safe. It's like Dad's going to take care of us.
Well, like they have the superior knowledge somehow that they know how we're supposed to live our lives, and then she gives this bottom line thing that every radical bureaucrat I've ever run into always got to use this. If the orders I issued kept one family safe or saved one life, it was the right thing.
And how do you track that?
And
how do you track whether or not somebody else died as a result of it?
That's right. What some of the unintended consequences of our decision making of this sort get really bad, and a lot of people start to suffer. There's no telling how many people have suffered already from the impoverishment of a lot of people because of these shutdowns, where they lose their businesses, lose their jobs, and who knows what else. Because that is a very, very powerful, that's a big killer too.
One thing that the judge said that I was surprised by and very respectful of is he said he didn't want to get involved in policy. Now, if you reflect back just a little bit to the Sandy Widener case and Judge Gash's habits in the newspaper, fully acknowledged, I made a public policy decision.
Yes.
That's not a judge's purview.
Right.
And this guy realized it, Judge Fredrickson realized it, and he stated it openly.
That's very good. And I love the fundamentals.
Yeah.
Where there is freedom here. There are people that can make their own decisions, and there is a limit to what a bureaucrat, claiming all this superior knowledge and all that type of stuff, there's still limits on what they can do, and that's what he's pointing out right here. What are the limits? And the litany, the other person you heard talk there, that was our city attorney, Scott Letney, saying that he's not claiming it was unlimited. Well. Okay, then what are the limits?
But he can't describe the limits.
If it's not unlimited, what are the limits?
Here's something I don't like. This is a quote. "The judge's recklessness jeopardizes the public health gains we have made and will endanger the health of our residents."
That sounds like
That was-
something like
That was
our
Corey
mayor
Mason.
say, yeah.
The mayor,
That-
Corey
that's-
Mason,
that's-
said that about a judge who was doing his job impeccably.
Right, right.
And that's,
Well, Corey Mason doesn't live in a society that he feels that people should be free to make their own decisions. That they should be run from the top.
Right. They
It's
believe
a
in government.
top-down
They
thing.
totally believe in government, and that's that. And the Common Council, he's got believing that they are this controlling body. You know that
Yeah.
they believe it, and that's very dangerous, not only for the people but for them. They don't realize. When things go bad, and
And they're
people
going to
get-
go bad under
Yeah.
this. It's
Yeah,
it's a
exactly.
proven bad route to take throughout
Yeah.
the history of mankind.
Exactly.
That you're going to run things down from the top down, and some authority up here is going to tell everybody else how they got to live their life.
I think you mean humankind. Mankind is kind of a sexist remark there, George.
Yeah, you got to control yourself, George. All right, I'm going to play a little bit
Whatever.
more here.
And
I'm going to play a little bit more.
I couldn't
Show
help
me in
it.
the statute where it's limited. Where are the limitations on her power? Because the Supreme Court couldn't find any for the Secretary of Health, and so they struck her powers and said, you don't have those unlimited powers. You're an unelected bureaucrat. This statute doesn't say you have those powers, and to read it that way, Secretary Palm, is not what you have. You have rulemaking authority. For Administrator Bowersox, she can't make rules, and she doesn't appear to have any guideposts, limitations to her power, nor the duration. Governor's got 60 days for an emergency. There's no 60-day limit for Ms. Bowersox. I don't see any limit. So before we go further, let's figure out where in the statute her limitations are, and if not, what you think that they might be.
Well, Judge, what statute are you referencing? You talked about several statutes in the administrative code with Mr. Nudo. I want to know what statute you mean so I can address it properly.
Well, let's start with the statutes that she's been relying on to pass her orders, 252.03 sub 1 and 252.03 sub 2. And I quote, she keeps quoting these, so let's talk about them. Under sub 1, the local health officer shall promptly take all measures necessary to prevent, suppress, and control communicable diseases. And then sub 2 also has a provision similarly worded. It says local health officers may do what is reasonable and necessary for the prevention and suppression of disease. Now, COVID-19 is a communicable disease. It's also a disease. So is diabetes. So is heart disease. And the way that I believe Administrator Bowersox may be reading her powers is that she has the power to control all diseases, prevent and suppress them. And if there aren't any guardrails on her power, what's to stop her from banning restaurants from distributing salt because of high blood pressure and maybe heart disease, or banning sugary drinks from being sold in the city because that's going to cause diabetes? And of course, she could also prevent and suppress disease if she bans alcohol so no one gets liver cancer or liver disease. That's how I read her ability. It talks about communicable diseases, but sub 2 is all diseases. And as I'm sure most people know, I looked it up, everything is a disease almost. So if that's the case, then Administrator Bowersox can control every aspect of people's lives in Racine. And I'm wondering where it says that in here.
so there it is, and the mayor and Bowersox are perfectly willing to operate under those conditions, unlimited
Yeah,
power. They have
exactly.
no problem with it. Corey Mason thinks it's ridiculous that this is being challenged, and this is the type of system, and I tell you what, we're going to continue to be all these things, the problems we've been having, like the second worst city in the country for as long as we continue to operate along those bases. Somehow along the line, we've got to turn this thing around and start having less government, more freedom, more independent decision making, and we can start to pull out of it. Where the whole city can just start to pull out and start to recover, and not be continuously suffering from these maladies that we have of abusing certain people.
Well, I like the way he handled the court. I think he's in charge of his court. I think he gives the opportunity for the individuals to express their concerns and their
Tell me. What are the limitations?
Right. I like the way he handles it. Let's talk about that. He brings it up, and here's the other thing that I've noticed he does that I've seen a lot of judges don't do. He reads. He actually reads it. He understands it. He understands when he goes to court and he's in front of he's in his courtroom. He understands what he's in front of him. A lot of them are just, they're expecting these attorneys to kind of fill them in. And that's one thing. Letney has had free reign from the city attorney. Because he's the city attorney, he must be right. So we allow that to happen. Instead of challenging Letney, which this judge did, he made him come up and say, what are the guidelines? Or what are the guardrails, he called them. And there is no guardrails.
Show me what you got.
Yeah.
And he came up with nothing.
So in another courtroom, would that have happened? I don't know.
No, I haven't seen it.
No.
We've had some other good judges, but I haven't seen one get down to that level of judicial decision making, where you're getting down to really basic things about the way government's supposed to operate, what it's like to be an individual in a free society, what are your rights?
Rule of law.
Right,
he actually ruled on law.
Yeah.
And he actually
he ruled,
especially in Racine.
He kind of looked at the law too, saying, well, wait a minute, I know what the law says. He read it, but what are the limitations? There's got to be limitations here, and that was very good. It was just refreshing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, nice.
I agree.
Well, speaking of refreshments, we could sure use some of the machinery row fiasco, couldn't we? Man,
yeah,
oh man.
It'd be nice to see something.
Well,
good there.
Sam Mazarian, who is one of the former owners of property down there in the Machinery Row complex, has filed a suit, and the city he's filed a complaint, I guess. And then the city's responded to the complaint, and now his attorneys have responded to the response. So that's moving along. And boy, it's all the things that we've been saying for years are now coming to a head here, and it's good to see. It's
one of the city is claiming that the Azarian does not have standing or can make a claim because of the statute of limitations has run out, or didn't make proper claims that he was damaged. Well, I've got my own opinion of it. It was fraud, but they came back with defendant came with unclean hands, meaning the city was the problem. They were the unclean hands. A great way to kind of step back, and now that's in Fredrickson court too. This case.
Well, so basically, what the city's been doing is, we'll get back to you on Tuesday on that. We'll get back to you. We'll call you.
Absolutely.
And Tuesday never comes.
They've had. They're classic. They're classic at the stall tactics and mudding the waters.
Stalling and distracting and confusing. I mean, they're guilty of all of those things.
They brought another one up. The city and RDA had actual notice of plaintiffs' claims and were not prejudiced. They knew it. They knew that this was going on. They knew they knew all of the whole process that was there, and the city knew it. So the city can't say, well, we didn't understand it. It says they had knowledge of other related machinery row cases. I mean, they knew it. So how can they go to court and say, well, Your Honor, we didn't know about this, and we didn't know that Sam Azarian had rights to relocation.
That is absolute bullshit.
It is.
Because they promote themselves as people who have a superior understanding of these laws.
Right.
And if you look at the laws and you look at their performance, they don't match up. Not at all.
No. And the other one was the city comes back and says, well, just don't sue us. Sue Rodney Blackwell, who was the developer. He's the one that really created all the problems. Literally, they came back with emails and used the word straw man and basically said, listen, Rodney Blackwell didn't gain from this. You're the one that gained. You now own the property.
Yeah.
So you're the actual one that actually had the takings. And so I'm not. Yeah, Rodney Blackwell. If you want to sue him, go ahead, sue him. We're not going to sue him because you have taken the property. You stole the car. In another words,
they were the ones that made people move.
Exactly.
They were doing evictions before they even owned it. It was just ridiculous.
Here's the other part, and it just leads right into it. It says the city determined every contract provision in the contracts. They
Yeah.
did the contract. How do you say you weren't involved? Rodney Blackwell, you probably made him for Rodney Blackwell. Rodney Blackwell, did you have a rubber stamp with his name on it just so you could put it on the document so it looked official?
They didn't just know that they were violating people's rights. They intended to violate people's
Exactly.
rights. They plotted and they planned and they worked to violate people's rights.
Yeah, it really looks
Yeah.
like that when you look at the whole
Absolutely.
sequence of events,
Absolutely.
going in before they own it, getting them evicted, so that we're not the owners and can make it look like we don't have to do relocation costs now because it was a private.
And
the whole thing with, like you say,
And when they
Doc,
bring
was
it back,
was like
it's
they were
past the
working at
statute of
it.
limitations. So they say, well, you didn't file in the limitations. Well, how would I know? You're saying Rodney Blackwell owned the
told me
property.
I couldn't.
Yeah, it was Rodney Blackwell. Well, Rodney Blackwell never owned that property.
No.
He signed a deed before it was even, I mean,
He never put a dime into it.
You talk about a classic case of straw man fraud. This is it. Classic.
It is. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
This
Well,
is-
let's
this
see.
is
Let's see if we
textbook
get
fraud.
get some more,
Textbook.
get some justice out of there. Hopefully for
Yeah,
the
I
Azarians
agree.
anyway.
Well, I would like to see everybody receive justice that was involved.
Well, it'd be
There were
good.
a lot of people that got hurt by that.
Yeah, that was
right.
That's
right.
and that goes all the way. It goes into the Sandy Widener case. It goes into the lumber that was taken out of there. You're talking about multiple tenants and property owners.
Well, the public too is lost.
The public lost big. The
Yeah.
public lost probably $18-20 million, and you take that away from a community that's relatively
That's struggling.
Huge, and there should be some accountability, and law enforcement just turns a blind eye. That may change.
Yeah, if this is a schoolyard, I'd be involved in giving them a pink belly. But this ain't a schoolyard, so you got to go through the courts. And I hope that all the people who were harmed by this, and it's not everybody who's been harmed by it or is going to be harmed by it is going to be made whole, because the taxpayers are deeply involved in this, and there's a lot of hurt that goes around. It's shared by all of us. We're all getting nicked a little bit for this. Collectively, the money that was wasted on this project could have gone to things like you said that would be more useful to the community, more helpful to the people
Yep.
that live here.
Yep.
It's gone, and there's still going to be some money that leaves. If the people who really got cheated are made whole again, it's going to end up costing us.
And then it's not going to be insurance, because an insurance company, you're not going to go to the insurance company and say, hey, geez, I stole that car, I crashed the car, and then I had to give it back with some money. Could you help me out? The insurance company's like, what? That's what's going to happen here. No insurance company's going to cover this. It's going to come right out of the coffers of City Hall. That's where these claims are going to come from, and it should hurt them because they have to learn. But again, it's another cover-up, and you got Letney claiming all this in their briefs of they didn't fill out in a period of time, and they didn't make this claim in a statute of limitations. Are you kidding me? It's all bogus. The whole argument he makes is bogus.
That's our lawyer. That's our guy.
That's our guy.
That's the guy that's defending us in the legal system.
And I hope some aldermen catch on to this, because ultimately they're the ones responsible for it. They're the ones that are allowing this to go on. The city is in their hands by law. Now, I agree that there's so many bobbleheads on there, it's kind of transferred over to people like Letney and Bowersox and Corey Mason, but it doesn't belong there, and it's only there right now because of the inattentiveness of the Common Council. Somehow we've got to get some good aldermen in there that are going to take this back over.
Oh man, when you start talking like that, I just see this massive project.
Well,
Get some good aldermen in there.
yeah.
It's
You
a long way
guys
to go.
got to help. You really
Hey,
gotta help.
get back to you and me, us.
Yeah,
We're the ones
man,
letting
man.
the aldermen get away with it.
And part of it's the education and understanding your local government and how it's operating. And it's not it hasn't been operating correctly. And I always go back to, there's a reason why Racine is in these situations, is because you don't have good leadership. You have untrustworthy leadership.
And there are people that understand what's going on there and are willing to do something about it if they get on that council. We've
Right.
already
Yeah.
have aldermen try to do it. So it's not like there's nobody out there that can do anything. There are people out there that can do things, know what to do, and will do it. But it's up to us to get them into those positions where they're able to put their talents to work.
So get educated and vote accordingly.
Well, George, I know we got limited time, but Unified, we have Actually,
Yeah,
today.
for the hearing comes up today, later
Yep.
today. Just
So
a couple
you may-
hours.
yeah, and there's been some videos made for Hot Government, and I know you're there, and I'm going to share them on Talking Racine.
At least
So
people will
good
know
stuff.
Yeah.
why
Good
we
stuff to watch.
appealed. That was the main thing I wanted to do with the video, show that we had some legitimate complaints. I'm hoping that Piontek agrees with that. I don't have the greatest, I'm not the most anxious to say, optimistic to say it's going to happen. But nevertheless, I feel like this money was illegitimately won by Unified, and that even in the appeal and the recount, the measures they took and the way they operated was not according to what would be beneficial to the most people. So it's
And it wasn't a fair process. For
no, that's what I mean
No.
by that. It was not. It was just.
Well, if you look at
one-sided
the reply to their basically they said we did everything by the book. Well,
they didn't do everything by
Yeah,
the book.
you
That's
didn't.
one thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
and how do you take 2 and 2 is 5? I mean, I don't understand
Well, the book.
that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Some of the procedures they took just did not make any sense, and they didn't come out right. And all we were saying is here's obviously what was done. In fact, that you followed the procedure, you still came up with the wrong answer. So just all we want to do is look at some more information,
Yeah.
And it's not like we're asking you to do the recount all over again. There's just like 10 words.
Let's
that we
correct
would
the
like to-
errors
yeah,
that were
yeah,
made in the
yeah.
recount.
Yeah, we have evidence there's an error there, and and a lot of them came out fine. It could be there were still mistakes there. It's just that we didn't have what I call prima facie. In other words, on its face, just looking at it, hey, you got 2 + 2 = 5 there. And we all know it's 4, so how come it says 5? A lot of places it said 2 + 2 = 4, but that doesn't mean they did it right.
Right.
But it means that we don't have a first look at it to say that it's wrong. But in 10 instances, that amounted to like 20 votes, which would reverse the thing. Instead of them winning by 5, puts us way ahead. So it's
Well, you did a good job with the part that I watched, where the taping that you just did earlier this evening. You did a good job with that. So everybody that has an opportunity, go to the Hot Government site and watch this man explain it, because you got it out
oh,
there.
good.
where
Good. I hope it's
Yeah,
clear.
and it'll help you understand
What we
why-
were doing,
why
we
there's a
weren't just
complaint.
throwing spaghetti against the wall.
Yeah.
Hope something sticks. We had some legitimate complaints.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And it,
And hopefully the judge will see that.
at least
and allow it
go to a
trial.
hearing, go to a trial, and
Yeah.
not just say, oh, they're just and not just agreeing with the government and saying,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's hope, and we will know a couple hours.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Should we have a special report this afternoon, maybe?
Maybe. We'll see. Yeah, maybe that would be a bad idea. Yeah, let's see what happens.
Well, in the meantime, we're still trying to check some more on the reform committee that the mayor came up with for the police department. So we want to have more information about that. When are they going to meet, and what their intentions are, and so on and so
The
forth.
task force.
Yeah. Well, we've been chasing that down a little bit, and we'll have more information for you in the coming days. So I think for right now, we've pretty much covered everything that we need to cover today. So well, keep your fingers crossed, whichever side you're on, because there'll be some news coming about the unified referendum in just a couple hours. And once again, thanks for being here. Come back and see us again next week. We'll be here waiting for you.